It's all really fun to be on the same ship going in the same direction rather than all disparate parts just coming together.
And even design and concept. So it's like, oh, this creature, this thing, this place is going to become important later. Let's get a design down that we're all really happy with so it becomes consistent.
And so let's talk. We've got, first of all, a big crossover about to happen again, Scourge of the Serpent. So I heard you earlier talk about, you want to do one of these each year. Battle of the Black Stone actually leads into Scourge of the Serpent in a way I didn't know. Yeah,
so what's great about it is each year you've got this, you can read the miniseries and you can enjoy it, but if you've been following along since the beginning, our 2023 launch, and you stick with us, you'll see these larger patterns and these larger payoffs. And that's what's really fun about it, is kind of getting both. You get to have a self-contained, cool sword and sorcery epic, but then each one is building an even bigger kind of mythic arc that we're carrying over a 4.5-year plan, essentially.
What I loved about Battle of the Black Stone was bringing us so many, to me, obscure Robert characters.
Yeah.
Like something I love, Black Agnes, since you probably can't use Red Sonja.
Right.
So like, this is a fantastic substitute.
Dark Agnes was one of the inspirations for the version of Red Sonja that Roy Thomas made, right? And so she has some of those qualities that we all love and are very iconic. And then you have characters like Solomon Kane, who is arguably either Kull or Solomon Kane is probably the second most popular Robert E. Howard character.
Yeah.
I'd say.
I'd say so, yeah.
And and Solomon Kane brings a totally different kind of attitude to the fore and stuff like that. But then there's characters like Kierwin and Conrad, who most people have never heard of before. And I think they're wonderful because they're these eldritch scholar, occult investigators who kind of go off into unknown spaces and unearth, the mysteries and curses of ancient times. And so they give us, whenever we're talking about the big plan, there are modern characters, because we're never going to go past the 1930s. And so they become the sort of bellwether of like the forces rippling forward and what does it all mean. They can they don't see all the patterns, but they see more of it because to them the other stuff is ancient history, which is kind of fun.
They're interesting characters because I think people, this comes and goes. We go in waves of supernatural detectives, if you will, becoming super like the 60s.
Right.
There's so many failed TV pilots.
Yeah.
And and then discovered that Robert E. Howard was doing it after as John Silence in I think the 20s was out.
Yeah. Well, it's an iconic kind of fun thing, right? What I love about Howard is that he's got Western characters and pirates, detectives and horror stories. Like he just kind of built this incredible library of genre fiction, and whether it's by design or by expediency, he would reuse terms and symbols and concepts and phrases. And so then we start to generate this tapestry of how can we more tightly link these together, or how can we make them echo each other in terms of theme and in terms of concept and in terms of storytelling. That's kind of the challenge that's been really, really, really fun. And when it syncs up in almost creepy good ways, where Jeff Shanks, he's our amazing Howard scholar, and why he's such a good collaborator is that I'll throw an idea out. I was thinking about this kind of thing, or I love this part from this one story, and he gets so excited. He goes, not only is there that, but there's this, and there's this, and there's this. And so it's this wealth, it's this treasure trove of concepts that you can then build upon, and it feels right. Yeah. And when you've got something that's in harmony and stuff that feels discordant. And so you're like, oh, that feels like it echoes really cool. So for example, Scourge of the Serpent, we have these 3 Howard stories that are happening in their own time periods, but each of them are kind of rippling forward and backward, whether it's through theme or through word or through, action. You're gonna see certain things that are happening across time. And it's from Kings of the Night. There's a character named Gonar. He's like a shaman. And he essentially says, moments in history do not matter. Everything is happening now. Everything has happened, happens now. And so we're doing that in a very literal sense, that when a character in the Thurian Age with Kull does something important, it will ripple forward and change the Hyborian Age or change the 1930s, and vice versa. It doesn't have to go forward, it can go backwards. And it's a heady cocky kind of concept that we're playing with, and trying to sell that on the page through the visuals, and sell that on the page when we make these distinct cuts of the time period. And it's been quite the puzzle to put together, but when it works, man, when I could feel it when we sync between two scenes, and I'm like, that's where that has to go, because what that character said so perfectly dovetails into what's happening over there. And intentionally, unintentionally, it just starts to create this wonderful synergy.
And it gets scientific, since quantum physics is sort of playing around with that same
Right.
idea. Does it ever freak you out?
Right.
Like, the science fiction and the fantasy writers were right.
Well, that's what's so cool about the stories. I think, Howard's, like a lot of the genre of fiction, it's visionary, or it's playing with heady ideas, and then you realize the same kind of fears and the same kinds of things that we always grapple with. Are we relevant? Do we survive? What matters most? You know what I mean? As an individual, as a community, as a society, as a religion, all these things that Howard was struggling with to answer in his writing. These are the same problems and things we think about 100 years later in different lenses, but it's still, there's a reason why it still resonates, and that's why I think it's so cool about it.
Yeah. And Chris, as editor and overseeing this, and last year what impressed me with Battle of Blackstone was that even a novel comes in and you don't necessarily have to have read the comics to get the novel, but what's it like in the office of Heroic 2? You're just figuring out, like, okay, how much is too much, how much is not enough?
It's really exciting because we are a fairly small company. We have maybe 10 people that are in the office, and everyone is a fan of comics, of sword and sorcery. They're all now fans of Howard. Everyone has to, when they first start, they have to do their crash course where they read a lot of Howard, which is great, but everyone's really passionate about it and really passionate about what we do. And so it's all very, synergistic.
Yeah.
And everyone is just, we're always talking, I'm always walking into people's offices like, do you remember this story when he did this, did he do this? We're just making sure that we're all on the same page. So when we're looking at these massive plans, it's great we always are thinking very, very far ahead and ways to tie everything in together, because we want to support the stories rather than just putting them out. We want to make sure that we have more aspects to draw on. The marketing team can really bolster over here. We can speak with Titan to make sure that the prose lines up at the same time with the comics. It's all really fun to be on the same ship going in the same direction rather than all disparate parts just coming together.
And even design and concept. So it's like, oh, this creature, this thing, this place is going to become important later. Let's get a design down that we're all really happy with, so it becomes consistent. Something simple like the Thurian Age is thousands of years before the Hyborian Age. So Kull versus Conan. Kull's is like this high fantasy, and then the cataclysm happens and it destroys it. Conan is a post-apocalyptic version of Kull's time. So he's going through the ruins and those spaces and graveyards of the earlier eras. And so if we have a location in one and then we show it half buried and destroyed in another, there's an interesting synergy in kind of there as well. Yeah. And it doesn't always have to be in your face. It can be subtle, because you're following along with the current story. But then again, if you notice over a longer period, they seeded that very, very early. Like there's a line in issue 4 that I purposely put in there that is going to synergize with our final story.
That's right.
And I put it in there specifically for that reason. And I know where it's going to pay off, and readers can still just read through and enjoy that story. But for me, that's the little nugget that's there for a reason.
And to say, I think I heard you say that you were at least contracted through to 2027.
Yeah, so my goal is this big mythic arc pays off in issue 50.
Okay.
And 22 just came out, so.
I also liked, you've said something about the approaches that when previous adaptations have happened, or if you call the ongoing comic an adaptation, that it's almost like it doesn't matter until it gets to a Robert E. Howard story.
Yeah, I don't think it was intentional, but there was that sense of, obviously they're the pillars, they're the canon pillars that built, the franchise. And so of course Tower of the Elephant's important. Of course Red Nails is important. And they are, but if then nothing else feels important, then people are just killing time until we get to the real Conan stories. And you're like, no, they're all real Conan stories. They all matter. They're all huge. They're all epic and amazing. And we had the benefit of being able to look backwards at hundreds of issues of comics, Savage Sword and the flagship Conan book, and say, what are the best and what works and why? So we stand on the shoulders of frost giants. Like we do, right? Like that people, literally 50 plus years worth of comics, 90 plus years worth of literary canon, and we have the benefit to look backwards and go, okay, we're doing a new publishing initiative. What worked and what didn't and why? So I don't think I'm some brilliant, oh man, we got to make all the stories matter. Like everyone made stories, of course they thought they mattered. But if you look at it in aggregate, you can sort of feel the energy dip when it's not a Howard story. And you're like, okay, well, we got to try and avoid that temptation, or we got to try and push, rebalance as best we can, because we've learned, because we have the hindsight to be able to figure that out. And that's a very rare and amazing thing to have at our disposal, an incredible archive, an existing fan base that is generational. Like when I go to conventions now, I'm meeting guys old enough to be my grandfather who are telling me they grew up reading the 70s comics, or in some cases reading Howard, in the 60s, the Frazetta, Sprague de Camp stuff. And now they're back into it for the first time in 20 years, and day and date on every issue. And I'm not saying this like to be hyperbolic. If I hadn't heard it, that when they read the book, they feel like they're 15 again. And that's thanks to our hard work. It's a very special thing. That's a very precious thing. Someone's nostalgia bringing it forward like that. And I take that very seriously, and it's very heartwarming to me. But that can't keep you from taking risks. You can't go, so don't do anything weird or don't try anything. Because the reason why they're on board and the reason why they keep reading is because there's cool cliffhangers and surprises. If we just said, all right, it's got to be just like every existing story, or we're only doing adaptations, then you're going to lose that sparkle or that surprise, Yeah, it's doing... we joke, but I mean this in a very real, heartwarming way. I said I'm everyone's dad's favorite new comic book writer. It's because these guys who'd never heard of my work before, now they're suddenly like, yeah, this is the stuff. And they're like, what else have you done? And you're like, dude, I've been doing comics for like 20 years, but it just wasn't in your Venn diagram. Like it wasn't, you didn't notice,
It's really incredible what you're being able to do, in that you are appealing, it's resonating with all these diehard fans that are generational, and now you have these new readers that are coming in.
They feel like they can get on board now.
Yeah, it's resonating with them as well,
yes,
which is a beautiful thing. And you see on like Reddit and whatnot, you see people saying, I've just started Conan, where do I start? And this fan base is so loyal, kind, just passionate, that they're like, this is where you start.
Yeah.
Come on in.
And you got to read the Titan books, and you're like, oh man, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's one thing for me to beat my chest. You should read my book. Like, it's another thing if someone else's, the good word of mouth has been so consistent. And I take that very, very seriously. The free Comic Book Day books are such a great entry on board ramp, and now they're also available right after free Comic Book Day digitally. So whenever someone, whether it's Reddit or Facebook, or anytime I see the social media posts and they say, I want to get into Conan, I can just send them those digital download links. And now we have 3 of them, 2023, 2024, 2025. Here are great on-ramps to the character and the current storyline. Costs you nothing, give it a shot. If you like it, you can get it through your local comic shop, or you can order books online. And that they feel welcome, that they don't feel like, well, your initial investment is going to be $100, just to try it. You're like, no. $0. Try it out. We're that confident, that it's going to work for you.
The savage crack of Conan.
Yeah.
So, after all these years working on playing in Robert E. Howard's universe, what surprises are there still for you?
I have not read all the stories. Jeff is the only one I know of who's read it all.
Which is incredible.
Which is insane. Yeah. And even the poetry and stuff like that. The lyricism. I read Howard now, of course, with a very different eye. And when I read for research, I'm listening to the lyrical and the poetic quality of the wordsmithing, and it's so good, and it summons visions in your mind, and it creates atmosphere, and there's texture there. And I aspire to not repeat it, but to even get within the wheelhouse of it. And every so often, I'll write a bit of narrative, or I'll describe a bit in the script, and it's a little electrical out of the keyboard, out of my fingertips, and you're just like, we're getting there. We're almost there. I did an interview with a podcast, and they specialize in reading and analyzing old pulps. And one of the things they always do when they review a story, one of their guys gets a real radio voice and he'll read passages from the stories that they're reviewing. And they do Howard stories, and he would read some of the best lines from whatever, Red Nails or, Phoenix on the Sword or whatever. And they interviewed me, and then they just randomly in the middle of the thing, he read out some of my words that I wrote in the book, but he did it in that voice. And I knew I'd written that, but then when he said it, it was almost like, oh, that's real. That's a real Conan story.
There's such a rawness and vitality to the original Howard that so few writers can echo, not even mimic, but like have that strength.
Yeah.
Like John C. Hawking really does it really well
He's
in prose.
amazing.
When I read Roy Thomas's outline for his story, I was like, oh my God, it's right there just in an outline. And then you hit it just so hard. It's such a hard feat to accomplish, and when you do, it is poetry.
I never take it for granted. Like when it works, one of the things, the challenge that Chris gave me at one point for Savage Sword was, hey, do you want to do a poem? And I'm like, oh, I didn't go to school I don't know how to. And he's like, I think you can do it. I was just like, oh. And it's sweating over those every word, because now you're not even, when you have the comic, you have your artistic collaborator, and Rob Zolatori and Doug Braithwaite and Fernando Dagnino. These are the best collaborators I could ask for, Now it's like raw on the page, just my words, poetry. Am I trying to summon this out of the ether? And rarely have I sweated so much over so small a word count. But again, when it works, you know. And that's been such a fun challenge, right? I don't want it to ever feel easy, because that means we're not working hard.
Thanks for watching. The party's not over. It's just going to be a little bit quieter from here on out. Please hit the subscribe button and visit fanboyplanet.com for more content, because you never know what's coming next. I know I don't. And remember, use your powers for good.